Hello, hello, hello. Here we are. Um, Man, exhausting morning. Um, Starting things late because I wanted to watch The Last of Us and talk about that a little bit. I don't know if everybody's watching The Last of Us, but it's it's pretty good. Pretty good. The Adventures of Oberyn and Lyanna. Pretty good. I imagine I'll talk about it more when Carmine joins because he's finishing up. He's got about 20 more minutes. But it was the last episode. I don't want to spoil anything for anybody that hasn't watched it yet too much. Maybe later on we'll get into spoilers. But it was kind of a filler episode to establish some chemistry between Oberyn and Lyanna, and it really worked. I definitely started feeling more for the characters, though. Um, this is the thing. I spent, even though I enjoyed the episode, and I understand that like things don't have to be like perfectly accurate, but with all of the apocalypse movies, I always find myself being completely anal about it, being like, well, that wouldn't be the case, that wouldn't be the case. And so I think with episode 3, I made a comment about how nobody's gasoline would be working this at this point 20 years on. And because gasoline goes stale, essentially the shelf life of gasoline, they tell you, is about 3 months. That's not really the case. Like it loses power over time. So like, 6 months your gas is fine. After a year or two, like it'll still run, but you're not getting very much oomph. And then after 5 years, that gasoline is pretty much like it's as water. And they actually like brought that up in this episode. Now I don't think the gasoline would be running at all, like at all, but he essentially states that the gasoline is running at about like 1/20th capacity, like 5% capacity. Like they have to siphon gas like every hour in order to keep going. So I appreciate that. But like um yeah, so I appreciate they at least brought it up, even though like I don't think the gasoline would be working at all after 20 years. I also don't think the roads would be drivable. Now granted, like roads get worse mainly from traffic. Like trucks are like really rough on roads, but the reason trucks are rough on roads is that they create a small hole, and then water gets in the hole, freezes, creates a larger hole. Water melts, water gets in the hole again, freezes, and then over the course of like the a few years, you've got massive potholes. And so the he's driving on northern roads in America, which would have a lot of like snow and stuff. So I kind of feel like there would be potholes everywhere, and that he wouldn't be able to drive so easily at those speeds. I also think like leaves would cover the roads after like one season, and then that becomes dirt, and then the next year like more dirt just builds up. So I don't know. It's yeah, the roads would be covered with dust and dirt. Now I don't know. Maybe there other people are like using the roads or something. Like maybe Fedra is like regularly using the roads and clearing them for people. I don't know. Like, but but for a road to still exist after 20 years. But this is like irrelevant stuff. Like irrelevant stuff. It's mainly Carmine's here. Hello, hello. Carmine, you are muted. Are you Carmine, you're still muted. Oh well. He's here. He just refuses to
Sorry, for some reason it was still loading. Um, uh, I will. You have a super chat. I'll wait till. But hello.
Oh,
Wait till the super
this
chat.
this is funny. Hey Preston, do you think Joel and Ellie will be swindled into stopping into Waldrug in Wall, South Dakota. Haha. What's funny is I was thinking about their route. Now, for a modern American today, if they were driving to Wyoming, and I've done that drive um, from like east to Wyoming, your route would be Boston down like the turnpikes towards like across Ohio, the Ohio Turnpike, and then top of Indiana. You'd pass through Chicago. You'd probably head up. At that point, you could keep heading west or head up 94 and like cross over to Highway 90, and then you'd probably take Highway 90 over, unless I'm just thinking Montana. Or it depends which part of Wyoming, but or you take 80. But they're taking 70. But I think it's the reason they're going down to 70 and over through Kansas City is because they're trying to avoid civilization, right? Right, Carmine. You live in Kansas. They're in your state, man.
First off, no, they're not. Number one. Number two, I live in Nebraska. Don't fucking listen to this guy. Jesus Christ.
You're right there. Kansas City, Missouri, not Kansas City, Kansas.
G.I. Gandhi, by the way, great name. They ask, have they gone to Pittsburgh yet in the show? So in the video games, this section of where they are in the show happens in Pittsburgh, not Kansas City, Missouri. Also, they don't give the hunters, which that's the group that they're encountering now in the show. In the game, they're called the hunters. In the show, I think they're just revolutionaries. So there's the differences, but they have gone through Pittsburgh, but to speed everything along to get quickly to Wyoming, for the sake of the journey, this is Kansas City, Missouri. For people outside the U.S., there are two Kansas Cities, kind of. Kansas City, Kansas, called KCK. Kansas City, Missouri, called KCMO. So, for the people outside the U.S. who don't know that.
Yeah.
Nebraska. That was close.
It's funny. So there's a long history of the United States interstate system, which is fiercely debated among Americans of whether or not it was a good idea or not, and its successes and travesties. The American interstate system, it was kind of the old story is that Truman or somebody decided to travel across the United States, and it took him like 4 days, and he was like so upset that he decided that America needed all these highways. I'm probably choosing the wrong president, but one president apparently did this, but then they thought they went and they built these highways through cities and right underneath all of the cities, and no one wanted to live there, and so they became these like pockets of poverty and stuff like that. Plus it like got America addicted to cars rather than using high-speed rail like Europe, but yeah, did I say 90 when it should be 94? Yeah, it would be 94. There's Interstate 90. Yeah, into Wyoming. So it could have been 9. They could like, I'm just trying to think, like, if you were actually going from Boston, you'd head down the turnpikes, cross over through Chicago, then you'd probably head up 94 and then cross into Montana. Or you can maybe take 90. They decide to get on 70. They go down to 70. They even mentioned Cheyenne, so I guess they've taken 70 up. Anyway, but I guess you're saying that this is in Pittsburgh in the which I guess
in
makes
the game,
more sense. That's
it's in Pittsburgh.
Way. Yeah, rather than Kansas City. Kansas City is pretty like that city. Is Kansas City that built up? I guess. I was surprised at how urban it looked. It looked more like Pittsburgh.
By the way, on the topic of this show, we uploaded the episode 1 to 3 review, and people keep saying, "Bro, Arcane broke the video game curse." No, it didn't. Arcane, for two reasons. First off, Arcane is not a live action show. That's number one. Number two, Arcane does not follow. I believe it doesn't follow the League of Legends storyline. at least Last of Us is for the most part following the storyline. They're taking some
Mm.
shortcuts here and there, and they're going into detail on more things like Bill's backstory with Frank and the hunters slash revolutionaries, because the whole what was this woman's name, Kathleen, that story's not in the game. So they're giving stuff more fluff, but then removing certain things. I think it's
The
doing a very good
the
job.
Kathleen character, she's a fascinating character. Like, to have somebody be so like commanding and have everybody follow her, and yet she's got this like nice sweet housewife voice, you know? Isn't is
I noticed that, yeah.
I've never seen a character in a show that they've trying like this, you know? So we'll see if it works. But it's yeah, it's interesting. I haven't seen
I'm still
Sonic.
surprised.
I
Oh,
haven't seen
Sonic
Sonic.
doesn't
Everybody
count.
talks
Sonic
about
didn't even.
Sonic.
Who said this? Who
I've been.
fucking.
It's not
Sonic
just.
doesn't
It's not
count.
just Jackie. I've been. A lot of people have been saying Sonic is a good movie. I've never seen Sonic, but I don't. But
Oh,
that doesn't
fuck
follow
off
the
with
plot line
Sonic. It
either.
doesn't even follow. Doesn't follow the plot line. No.
Right. It's kind of like Detective Pikachu, which is not a great movie. But like Detective Pikachu, it has Pokemon in it, but it has nothing to do with Pokemon. Right? They're not.
It did not follow any of the game story, any
No.
of them whatsoever.
Right. Like it's not a show about like Ash and Pikachu like battling Team Rocket. Like, right? Isn't that?
Yeah, it's not. It's 110% definitely not. I think this one here, with the exception of Mortal Kombat, I think that broke the video game movie curse. I think this
Yeah.
one is breaking all of them in regard. What did you think of the episode? You like it? I thought it was good.
I thought I liked it. I liked it. I mean, obviously it was a filler episode, but it was a needed filler episode. Like we're 4 episodes in, and we don't really know who Joel is at this point, or who um what's her real name? Liana's real name? Ellie?
Ellie, yeah,
Ellie. Ellie.
Ellie, yeah.
If we don't really know Oberyn and Liana's personalities that much, and we're 4 episodes in, so we needed a person. We needed an episode because we know what past Oberyn is like. We know when he was young, and then episode 2, just a lot of shit's going down, and so you don't get really a chance to breathe, and then episode 3 isn't about them. So like we needed an episode to get into what they are like now, and establish their relationship and have the characters grow and become attached to each other. So it was a breather episode, bit of a filler. It gave a lot of great atmosphere on what the country looks like at this point, the setting, and it worked for me. I liked the puns. I liked the puns.
I love the puns. I'll be honest, I was not I was a little on Ellie in the last couple episodes, but now like I do. She's coming into it, and I'm starting to like the character more. People kept saying, "Yo, you didn't like it because she's not attractive." I don't think Game Ellie is attractive. I just think Liana Mormont has like a weird face, face.
First of all, she's just like a regular person. Like she's not. I don't think she's. I don't.
I
think
hate when you
she's like,
say that because you make it sound like I'm hating on her because she's a regular person and not supermodel hot. Like Sophie Turner for Son. Like, no, or Emilia Clarke for Daenerys. That's totally not it. She just have like this
think
like
she's probably
face.
real life pretty. You'd probably bang her in real life, Carmine.
I would totally not. Don't listen to him. Wait, how old is she? I'm totally. Hold on. Let me make this fucking
like
clear.
20. Like there's no like there's. She's like 20 years old.
You never know. Like I'm telling you right now, people out here trying to catch us. Fucking people out here trying to catch us. Okay, she's 19. Okay, even as a 19, I still wouldn't, Preston. I still wouldn't.
That's not true. You would. That's ridiculous.
Stop it. No.
I don't know what you. Oh, I didn't know Detective Pikachu was based on a Detective Pikachu game. I didn't know.
That's a video game? What the fuck?
I don't know. I'm not up on anything besides Pokemon Go. They should head to Memphis, Tennessee, best city in the world and best state in the union. That's my advice. Head to Memphis.
Is this
but
a
the thing
meme?
is they're
No, it's
trying
not.
to avoid civilization. Like you may think Memphis is great, but they don't want to run into like zombie zombie Elvis coming out of the ground and like eat, trying to French kiss them with like tentacles, so whatever would
Oh, that's
happen.
another plot. That's another plot they're throwing in there. Apparently, like the safe zone that they're in right now, that they're coming like weaving in and out of in the city, is going to be overrun with infected. That's another interesting point they're putting in there. So because
Yeah.
Ben Shapiro, your boy Ben, was complaining about episode 3 how it didn't feature any of the zombies.
He just didn't like it because it was too gay, right? And he's like finding other reasons to like bash the episode. That was just like a great episode.
Mhm.
Um, have you played the game Preston Carmine? Carmine's played the game. I have not. Some people harassed Carmine for missing a few things because so there's two ways to play video games. There's finishing it to the end, and then there's like going through the fine tooth comb and like finding every Easter egg. When I play a video game, do that. Like when I played, we were talking last time about how I played Dead Reckoning. I went back after winning Dead Reckoning and like unlocked every achievement. Like there's an achievement that's like kill 40,000 zombies and you have to get into a van and like drive around in the tunnels for like 45 minutes, crash like running into zombies. I did that to unlock every single achievement in the game,
Holy
Like,
shit!
I know. Um, but Carmine did not like go through and like unlock every achievement and find every Easter egg. So apparently, like to figure out that Frank and Bill are gay, you have to go and like search through all the stuff and find like Bill's gay porn and stuff like that. And so like yes, they were gay in the video game. However, if you just play the game, it's not going to come up unless you like search through his shit and find these like Easter eggs, right? So people were giving Carmine like shit for being like, dude, what are you talking about? They were totally gay in the game. How did you not know that? And it's like, well, he didn't know that because he didn't fucking look through every goddamn drawer in Bill's bunker.
I I play the game, and that plus the game came out like actually 10 years ago in 2013. So,
So
but you
you
should definitely
done.
still play it. It's on some level it is linear. Some spaces are a little open, kind of, but
Yeah.
it's linear, so you won't spend too much time on it like
Oh,
Skyrim.
I see. Yeah. She does have a weird face. Poor Liana Mormon. She's everybody's got a weird face. Everybody's got a weird face. It things about like we're so critical of people on TV. I admit it, but I mean the thing is, people were bashing me for who was I critical for about? Wasn't there somebody in Game of Thrones that I was like trashing, and everybody's like, "What are you doing? Like that person's hot," and I was like, "Ah, totally
Matt
forget it."
Smith?
Probably I think it is Matt Smith. Matt Smith among others, but I was being super critical of Matt Smith, and people are like Matt Smith's super hot, and it's like it's the exact same situation, right? Like there's something a little odd, but they have a lot of character, and in real life they're plenty attractive. They're fine, but um, Carmine, could you please put a gun to Preston's head and force him to watch all of UC Gundam's Clockwork Orange style and make a 20-hour review? Thank you. Um, is UC
Universal
Gundam
Century?
Clockwork Orange style a good anime?
What do you mean? You see like all of Universal Century, like original Gundam 0083, like that, or Unicorn? Is that Unicorn? I don't know what UC means. Would Preston like Gundam? I don't know. He might like Thunderbolt, because I think Thunderbolt's the best one, or 8th MS Team, which I think is also pretty awesome. But like, no one's gonna fucking sit there and watch Double Zeta. Who the fuck likes Double Zeta? And how the fuck did you not like Gundam?
Is it
Who
better
told you this?
is it better than Ranma one half?
Yeah, I think so.
So
I love how you only watched like Ramen one half. Jesus.
So whatever, like people bring up anime and people are like totally into anime. I love to bring up Ranma One Half because it's just like such a ridiculous anime. It's not a bad anime, but it's just like so bonkers weird and and it makes there's some people that hate Ranma One Half is a story essentially about a guy who every time he gets wet he turns into a girl. And there's like so many seasons and it goes on for years because other characters they get wet and they turn into animals and shit. But he gets wet and he turns into a girl and he's always getting hit on by other characters. And it's the most ridiculous it's just the most ridiculous manga anime. But like so I bring it up all the time with Carmine as like this is the thing we judge all manga against. Is it as good as Ranma One Half?
You should be
Like
asking if
complete.
is it as good as Death Note because you watch Death Note.
Yeah, I watched Death Note. Yeah, I've watched Death Note twice actually. So I know Death Note pretty well because
Wait, wait,
also
wait.
like Death Note
You
gets
watched
confused.
the anime twice?
Yeah, because I watched it and then I watched it with my wife, and then I think I've watched the third part a third time because the third part gets really confusing about how they eventually
The third part.
catch Kira. And
The third part. Did you watch the anime or like some live action movie?
no, the anime. So the show
Okay.
is roughly broken down into thirds. Where like L dies at the 2/3 point, and then N and M come in.
Spoiler.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, but Near and Mellow come in at the end, and the show changes from being kind of more character driven to being like a very complicated story of like complicated chess story of like how are we going to catch each other and what's going to happen, and like it's a fairly complicated plot on what Mello does in order to out Kira and allow Nier to catch him. And there's a debate of whether or not Mello knew what he was doing and committed suicide in order for Nier to catch Kira. And you have to go back like a few times and look at the events and be like, did that happen? Did that? Uh, like so.
I'm gonna be very real with you. When L goes and it's Near and Mellow that comes in, it kind of goes downhill a little
Oh,
bit. I
absolutely.
like the
It's not of a
Kira
good because the
versus L.
show was totally L was the best character. Like, why would you kill L? And then
Mm.
and then so it's not that I didn't like Near and Mellow. I thought Mellow was a really cool character. They should have had more Mellow. It focuses more on Near, but like, uh, you know, but I do appreciate the complexity of the final act. So I don't know. Death Note was cool. The movie though, oh Jesus. Um, I've actually seen both the Japanese movie version on a plane and the Netflix movie version. Um, Neither one is very good,
Mm.
though. The Japanese one is a little better. I think there's two Japanese movies, but I watched them both on a plane in a row. But the Japanese one is a little better than a lot better than the Netflix one, which is pretty atrocious. Um, the Attack on the Titan review. I haven't finished on Titan, so or
Oh, you
Attack of the
started it.
Titan, Attack of the Titans, Attack on Titan. I mean, the I started it and then um honestly like it didn't pull me in too much. You know, a
Mm.
lot of the
That's
characters
understandable.
were very stock anime, and I was like, oh gosh, you know, all right. You know, we're going with these. Okay. So people tell me it gets better and that you kind of have to like it builds. So I don't know, but it didn't pull me in the first, and I gave it a shot. I watched like the first 5 or 6 episodes. Um, um, Good thing about the apocalypse in North America is guns and ammo probably won't run out anytime soon. lots of canned goods to last. Yeah, the canned goods thing, they were eating that 20-year-old Chef Boyardee, which you could canned goods probably would, some of them would last that long. The big thing is that the cans eventually kind of, even though it's stainless steel still eventually rusts and get holes. And then the with the when they're in the one episode when they were stocking up on food, he said no cans with a bulge. That the bulging can thing is um botulism, so you don't want botulism in your stuff. um and so you can't eat that. But yeah, they could probably have 20-year-old Chef Boyardee, though they're getting 20 years is getting to the point, you're coming upon the point where canned goods start like expiring. So they're the whole country would probably be in this like crisis. I don't know how much they're relying on, like how much the world is relying on canned goods. Like, where's the farming? Are they doing farming? Is that in the video game, Carmine? Oh well, Carmine's gone. Muted himself again. Fine. But guns and ammo, I'm trying to think of like how long black powder lasts. Because that's another thing. Um how long does black powder last? Because I thought black powder, oh no. Oh, okay. If optimally stored, black powder lasts forever. Because I know that like humidity will get your black powder, and so if it's properly stored, I suppose your black powder can last forever. Um, Death Note Mela is underrated. He was cool. Yeah, he was really cool. He's I mean, I'm ruining Death Note, but like, they kill off the best character, but then like they have to bring in like two characters to deal with it. You find out that this character was raised in an orphanage, and they get these other two orphans from the same orphanage, and so Mello is this like cross-dressing, like super violent guy who does whatever it takes to like um, to achieve what he wants. And then Nier is this like completely autistic um, thinker guy who plays by the rules. And even though it's never explained, Nier and Mello hate each other. They hate each other and they refuse to work with one another. But then there's this moment where Mello is analyzing everything and he realizes that the only solution he has to catching Mira is to do this one move that will essentially end in his own death, but it'll hand all of the material to Nier to solve the case. And so he does it. And so like in death, the two work together and like, catch it.
They were able to surpass L and
Yeah.
catch Kira.
Yeah.
By the way, yeah, I spoke, but I guess I was muted. I forgot to unmute myself. In the game, yes, there are some communities that farm, and there are some communities that go through other means to get their nutrients and sustenance. I won't go into detail, but yeah.
Oh, cannibalism? Eating fungus?
Something like that.
Oh jeez. Oh jeez. This is one of the kind of mistakes that they keep putting in these post-apocalyptic movies and everything, where especially like Walking Dead, like every single person, the only people that are useful are the people that can like wield samurai swords and like cut down zombies. Like in an apocalypse, the people that are going to be really useful, okay, farmers, doctors, like people that know about building fires and like repairing vehicles. Like there's a lot of these like really really important people, like the people that actually like build society, that are super useful, not the people that like are really good at killing. So this is the whole thing about like army people, like when people are like, oh, thank you for your service, like thinking that you were on the front line like shooting, when like 9 out of 10 are logistics, and the logistics people are like actually what makes and breaks everything. But it would be the same thing like in the post-apocalypse. Like the logistics people are the ones that like are going to keep your community alive. But we never have that. Everybody's like, oh, the guy with the crossbow. Who's the guy with the crossbow in Walking Dead? Um,
Daryl.
Daryl. It's always like Daryl, and Sim- who's the girl with the samurai blade? Simone?
Michonne. No,
Michonne.
Michonne.
Michonne. Um, the let's see. Oh, there's something real quick here. Oh, any updates on Arion 3? Arion 3, I'm about 2/3 the way through. It's looking good. I keep kind of going, and then a better idea comes, and I'm like, ah, crap, no, that works better. But I'm just trying to get to the end. But essentially, it's you know, um, uh, I've gotten through Arion going in, and then Arion having a conversation with Gilbert Faring, and the Gilbert Faring conversation I think is a lot better than I thought. Though it's clunky, so I'm gonna the editors are really gonna have to make it sound like George. I'm not doing great on making it sound like George, but yeah, pulling the final part just needs to be done. About 2/3 done. I think we should see it soon. Um, and then there was one other thing. Oh well. Oh well. Um, I was thinking about like near back at Death Note, Near and Mellow, Near having those little action figures, and he's like, Near and Mellow together surpass L. You're like, oh god, you definitely remember that scene, Carmine, because you mentioned the
Yes.
surpassing thing. um, you mentioned that Three-Eyed Crow is probably Bran. Three-Eyed Crow visited Euron when he was young. Isn't that before Bran's birth? Isn't he butterfly affecting himself? This is something that is definitely a definitely like one of those things that gives me pause with my time traveling Bran theory. Like it doesn't seem if the time traveler is Bran, um, he he shouldn't be able to go before his own birth and change stuff because then that would ruin the existence of himself. Um, but somebody was visiting Euron when Euron was young, and so it may be that that it was Bloodraven, that like previous people were trying to manipulate the timeline. Additionally, like the unlikeliness of like Bran's life coming together and being this perfect genetic specimen seems unlikely. So it seems like there was somebody pulling strings um, beforehand. So it might be that the previous three-eyed crows were doing stuff. I just don't know if the previous three-eyed crows were time travelers or things like that. But the so um I yeah, like it would butterfly affect himself if he time traveled before he was born. The only way that you can have it happen is if it's an unchangeable time loop and everything's like predestined. But that's not a very interesting story, and I don't think George would be into that too much. Like a predestined kind of thing to try to get the exact sperm to get to the exact egg. Like, what's the point of time travel if if everything is predestined? Um, how do you know so much about Bangladesh? You mention it so often. I've been to Bangladesh. I went there for work for a week, but I don't know. I kind of mention it a lot as like a stock random country. You know how people randomly choose the number 17, like, and it doesn't really. It's not a random number if you're always going to 17, but 17 sounds like a random number. Like no one ever goes, oh, let me choose a random number 10. Like, well, 10 doesn't sound like a random number, even though you'd randomly hit 10 just as often as 17. Um, so I always like choose Bangladesh, even though it's it's just a country I went to. It's a weird country. It's you know Dhaka. has all these holes in the sidewalk that you can fall down, and you're just drowning in cables everywhere. There's just cables after cables after cables on the roads. Um, you know, it's it wouldn't be the end of the world to live there, but like it's not a it's not a super pleasant city, and I don't think any like Bangladeshis would would praise it too much as like the greatest place in the country. um, let's see here. Have you ever watched Cowboy Bebop? I watched like the first few episodes of Cowboy Bebop, but apparently it's another anime that takes a while to really get into. Um, Gate, Your Lie in April. I don't know any of these. Carmine, you've watched all Cowboy Bebop?
Yes, I love it. It's phenomenal. All the every anime YouTuber who's like has millions of subs or whatever, like those snobby guys, Cowboy Bebop is always in their top five. Or top 10. You'll always find it there. Stein Gate as well. That
Yeah,
one I haven't seen. It's on my list. Your Lie in April. If that's slice of life, fuck out of here with that.
yeah, yeah. Um, Cowboy Bebop, like I understand, like it had a different um thematic mood than most anime, and I think maybe that's why it like sticks out in people's minds. But um, switching up, when are some North chapters coming? I know everybody wants to get to the North, but you know, we've gotta. I just want to like untangle the. I want to untangle the White Raven knot first, and then we'll decide if we want to go north or east in the next thing. I know people are like very very excited about resolving the north, and that's what they're most interested in. But it's also hard, um, especially when like Bran is probably the most difficult chapter at all, of all. But we'll see, we'll
Do a brand
try. I like
chapter, you
before
coward. I want
pushing.
to see this.
What's that?
Do it. Do a brand chapter, you coward. I want to see this one. Go ahead.
Oh, I know roughly what I'm gonna write with Bran. Um, but it's what the stuff I don't know is like if he's going to refer to like parallel events with Theon and Asha and Melisandre, you know. That's all. That's all. I mean, it could probably do Bran one, and then um, but we'll see, we'll see. I mean, I know exactly what I'm gonna. I've thought about it a bit in the past couple of weeks on Brand, so I'm pretty well. I know plot wise what I want. Like unlike say Jamie, where I'm just like Jamie and Brienne, I'm just like I have no idea what to do with those characters. I have no idea how to resolve um, uh, Lady Stoneheart at this point, or even like Cersei. The exact like I roughly know where I want Cersei to be, but like how to the complexities of King's Landing is a lot, or like Sam. There's so much going on with Sam. There's easier ones. There's low hanging fruit, like you know, the Battle of Fire is lower hanging fruit dealing with that situation. Um, so I don't know.
I forgot. I was thinking like Bran would be your toughest, but
hmm.
no, clearly your toughest would be like Jamie or Brienne or Lady whichever chapter you decide to do from their point
Yeah,
of
because
view.
I
That
think
would be the toughest.
because Brienne and Jamie is like George R. R. Martin's moral political message for the entire story. Um, and getting that right is really tough. um, it's a shame that Twinkies last forever. They taste terrible. There's a line about that in Zombieland where he says where Woody Harrelson's like, contrary to popular belief, Twinkies don't last forever. And there's hardly, and he's like he just wants to find one. His whole goal is to like find a Twinkie. um, I watched a guy on here, Steve, 1989 MRE, eat a beef ration from the Boer War in 2018. Oh my god, canned food can last, lol. So, I read an interesting article about whether or not people could eat um mammoth meat. And the last mammoth died, tens of thousands of years ago in the last ice age, hunted down by man. And but every once in a while they find these mammoths like frozen in snow. And the question is like, could you actually like eat mammoth and what would it taste like? And the what's funny about the mammoth is like, okay, first of all, when an animal dies, it starts rotting, so it's really difficult to like get a piece of meat that wouldn't be rotten. But say like he falls, he freezes, and there's like, you hack up a whole mammoth, maybe there's a chance that there'd be like one morsel in a whole big mammoth, like one morsel of meat that was not spoiled, and that was frozen and was safe to eat after tens of thousands of years. What would it taste like? And the answer is it would taste horrible because it would be freezer burned for 10,000, 20,000 years. Like how bad your meat tastes like in in your freezer. Now again, we're talking about survival here, but like I imagine that beef ration from the Boer War was tasted horrible. But I mean, as long as you're getting food and you're getting nutrition out of it, you know. 2/3 or 3/5, 7/12. I'm
Oh, by the way, real
11
quick,
17ths.
before you get onto your next super chat, I was thinking about it just now, and yeah, that's a very good point. The toughest one will be the Lady Stoneheart confrontation. I'm assuming you're going to have a chapter, either Jamie or Brienne's point of view, with Brienne escorting Jamie to where Lady Stoneheart is for that ambush. But
Yeah.
I'm wondering, are you gonna cop out and instead of having Jamie and Stoneheart come to a confrontation, are you going to have Brienne try to signal and warn Jamie, and he just like escapes it before he encounters her, Stoneheart?
So here's what I think is happening. I don't think that Brienne is betraying Jamie. I think that like I think she has a plan. I think she has a scheme um to not go against Jamie. I think if Jamie's going to betray somebody, it's going to be Lady Stoneheart, that she's going to betray Catelyn and she's going to break her oath. I mean, what I think with Brienne is that we have a parallel situation where Jamie made a vow to Aerys, but Aerys eventually went to the point where he was he did something so against Jamie's moral beliefs that Jamie had to kill him, you know? And so everybody like hates Jamie because Jamie was a kingslayer, but like it's because Jamie chose his own moral path, and his own moral path was like superior to just following Ares. This is the problem with like I mean, this gets into this philosophy of like deontology. Like deontology is like doing your duty because it's your duty, and you need to do your duty despite like negative consequences. You do your duty because the doing your duty is the right thing. It's a deontology is a it's a moral philosophy for children. It doesn't work. Like it's this and this idea that knights are going to, you know, stand up for their king and follow their king and do their duty because that's what's important is deontology. Um and it's ridiculous because you're just phoning in your morality. I need to get a drink of water because I'm because I just keep um, getting a frog in my throat. Hold on a second, I'll be right back. So yeah, deontology is for children. It's a silly moral belief, and like knightliness and doing the right thing without like establishing where the right thing comes from and just like phoning it in and just like following somebody else is just a crappy moral system. And so like Jamie's decision to kill Ares was the right thing to do. It was overwhelmingly the right thing to do. The thing is, Brienne has made the same vow to Catelyn, and the same situation is happening. Like Ares is you know, Brienne said, "I'm going to follow Catelyn, do whatever Catelyn says," and just like Jamie did. And so Brienne has to kill Lady Stoneheart. Lady Stoneheart, she has to betray Lady Stoneheart. Lady Stoneheart has to die. That's definitely in place. Um, but there's some other things like what else, like what pushes Brienne to over the edge, and where do you take the characters after that, and but I think Brienne has a scheme because she says to Jamie, we need to rescue Sansa or the Hound is going to kill her. And it's like, why is she saying that particular line in order to pull Jamie into luring Jamie somewhere? And I think it has to do with like the fact that Lemoncloak is wearing the Hound's helmet now. And so when Jamie arrives, he's going to think that Lemoncloak is the Hound, and that there's some sort of scheme um, going on there. But I haven't really figured out exactly what's happening. But I think she could have said anything, right? She could have just said, "Oh my gosh, I figured out where Sansa is. Like, let's go." But she says this line about the Hound, and I think that has to do with something about Lemoncloak and like you know um, I don't know, fooling. Why she needs to fool Jamie and not just come clean, I don't know. But I have to think about it and figure out exactly what her plan is. But I think she has a plan. Um, my economics degree will save me in the zombie apocalypse. If zombies come out and they want the Lagrangian done, and they want you to do some linear algebra to find the bounds of a three-dimensional object in four-dimensional space, like you will be the person. um how many times have people told you to watch Evangelion? I've heard this at least a couple times, but not too much. um
Let me, yeah, because some people's heads just exploded. It's Evangelion. That's
okay.
the term.
Okay.
Would
Neon
you like
Genesis
So
Evangelion.
Evangelion, yeah. So some people, there are very few series on the planet I would say require like a professor to explain it to you. Lord of the Rings, sure. Evangelion is one of those like you'd have to take a fucking class in college to get all the like intricacies and insanities and like all the references to biblical shit and all that, like the doors of Gulf they mention, and some of the angel names are
I
Azrael
see.
and Bile and all that crap. Um, yeah, I don't know if you would like that because a lot of it is like teenage bullshit angst and some
Mm,
mecha fights. So it's edgy Gundam. I
gotcha.
don't know how much into that you'd be into.
I just watch anime for the fat material. That's just it. Yeah, this is it. There's the material. The big purple guy. Um,
Ironically
um,
enough, to Markel's question here, the most recommended anime you get to check out is, I believe, Berserk. That's the one you get the most.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, let's see here. Oh man, am I behind here? Will Winterfell be important in the long night? I believe so. Um, in my time traveling brand video, where I started talking about how I think there's something to brand floating and um, sensory deprivation in the ability to enhance one's telepathic abilities. I think that that is a thing that's happening in the series. You know, like Bran stays in the dark underneath Winterfell. His mind wakes up. Arya goes blind. Her mind wakes up. Something happens with Aeron in the dark. His mind wakes up. There's more stuff with like floating as well, falling, these kind of feelings. Danny floating in a bath and having Quaithe appear. These sorts of things. Her after her her stillbirth with Rhaego, she feels like she's floating and things like this. So I do think there's something to the sensory deprivation chamber kind of aspects to having your mind wake up telepathically. And I think there's something to the floating pools in Winterfell in front of the weirwood tree. Um, like every time like people are floating in baths, they keep mentioning like, oh, it reminded me of Winterfell, you know. And so I do think that there's something to that maybe like that that Winterfell tree is special um, in some way. Now in the show, you know, they had a you know, it be the place in which Arya needed to kill the Night King and all of this, and Bran sat there. But I do think there's something to that pool and that weirwood that would make it a prime spot for uh, um, telepathic abilities. Um, Please save spicy politics for later. How to argue against higher taxes on the wealthy, punish success, and stymie economic growth. Love your videos, and I appreciate your work. Yeah, we can talk about it later on. I guess we'll in a little bit. That's a pretty common thing here that people talk about. Let's see here. Payet Pri named after Pripyat in Ukraine. There's a city called Pripyat in Ukraine. Let's find it. Um, but you know, there's a city in Turkey called Batman, and so a lot of people go there and have their picture taken in front of this sign that says Batman. Um, but just by coincidence, oh, here it is, Pripyat, Pripyat. Sometimes spelled with a Y. Some oh, it seems to be on a oh, interesting. So it's more than just that. So Pripyat is actually an abandoned city um, near Chernobyl, and so this is here's Pripyat, um, one of the cities they had to abandon after the Chernobyl incident. Huh. Well, I mean, I still don't think. I mean, it would be pretty cool, like to have something kind of weird and creepy be the influence for Payet Pri, but I still don't know if George did that. But look at that, man. I've known a few people. You can go on these like tours into here, and people are like, "Oh, what about the radiation?" And it's like, well, you know, if you're only going for like a day, it's not that big a deal. It's like nobody lives there because you don't want to have like be living there all the time and like drinking water and but it's an area of the world that apparently it's just like yeah gone back to nature. Um, uh, yeah, crazy stuff. I mean, it would be interesting, but yeah, I don't think George was doing that. Did Kat's death release Brienne from her oath? No, no. Kat's death did not release Brienne from her oath. And like to be sitting there legalistically being like, well, technically, no, that's not how like morality works. Like you know, like there's it's the same with like the John thing and his oath. Like trying to find outs and technicalities. That's That's not that's not the world, Um, so no, she's still bound to Catalan. Um, I you know, be like, well, technically she's dead. No, 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 no. Plus, like, I think her oath, she thought Catalan was dead, and she kept going with her oath. So the oath didn't release her. Also, Jamie brings up the fact, like, in his head, that technically he made an oath by sword point, and how binding would that really be? Would the High Septon really, like, accept that? And clearly no, like, it's not a binding oath, but that's the whole point. Jamie's not doing it because he wants to follow Catalan. Jamie is doing these things because he personally believes they're the right things to do. He's choosing to do these actions. Like, he doesn't really care about, like, honoring an oath to Catalan. He's just it's kind of these schemes. Um, Jamie Lannister finds his own morality. He doesn't um, he does what he thinks is right at all times. So, the good and the bad. He doesn't just phone it into Cat. But yeah, I mean, come on, like, she's gonna execute him unless he agrees to this oath. Like, no reasonable person would feel bound to that. But Jamie does it because he wants to do it, because that's Jamie. um, Great breakdown explaining Bran's time travel. Could you explain Tyrion's boat somehow teleporting uh, to us? So I've thought a bit about this boat, and here's the weird thing, and this might be just a coincidence, but there are some rivers that, at certain times of day, because of tides, flow in two directions. And it turns out that the Hudson River in New York City is one of these rivers. That it will flow backwards at certain times of day based on low and high tide, um, having a bidirectional water flow. Now, let's bring up Bayonne, New Jersey on the map. Let's see here. Where's my Bayonne? Bayonne, New Jersey. Oh, here we go. Okay, let's see if I can. So, this is Carmine's old stomping ground, but you all see where Manhattan is, and if you go across the Hudson River to New Jersey, you've got Hoboken, and then this little Hoboken Peninsula. The end of it is Bayonne, and that is where George R. Martin grew up. So the Hudson River, this river that goes in two directions, empties out right in front of his house. Okay. Now, did George R. Martin know this, like, particular fact about the Hudson River? I don't know. He's never brought it up in any interviews or anything like that. But the Hudson River flows in two directions depending on the tide. George R. R. Martin lived in front of a river. That's direction, the now in A Dance with Dragons, like Yandri says, like the river flows the way it flows. I want to say, I want to get the exact quote here. Um, about it. Does he say the Rhine flows as the Rhine flows or something? So, Fabled Rhine, Little Rhine, 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 Rhine. He just says, Mother Rhine runs how she will, murmured Yandri. Now, I admit this idea of like the river changing course and the boat going backwards and then going forwards again, you'd think they'd see the bridge 3 times. So I'm not saying it's completely like logical that they're seeing this bridge twice, or it could just be a different bridge, and that there were 2 bridges, and rather than the second bridge, But I mean, the most logical explanation is they made a mistake. There were 2 bridges, and they just had to like pop. They just thought that the second bridge was the same as the first bridge, even though there were 2 bridges. Um, or there's something to go with the flow of the river, the boat going back without them knowing, and passing the bridge a second time. But you'd think he would have like there'd be 3 times under the bridge, But I think it's curious though that there is possibilities about a river being kind of weird and a boat floating in weird situation and being around. So I think the explanation is more related to the flow of the water, or there just being a second bridge, than therefore to be actual teleportation. Even though in the past, like I'd mentioned, like, oh, that's weird, there's teleportation and like time, but I think it's a little more compelling that it's just the river flow and or a second bridge or something like that. Um, um, okay, maybe you're old enough, Preston. Do you remember Oreo granola bars? What if Stoneheart makes Jamie do trial by combat? Stoneheart's champ is Brienne. Huh. I don't remember Oreo granola bars. I mean, I remember like Reese's peanut butter cup cereal. Um, it's funny. The other day I was watching a Mr. Sunday Movies video, and they had on like Jocko, who I had not thought of Jocko, the Energizer Australian guy, in honestly 20 years, like or 20, 30 years maybe. Like it's just this like random, maybe even more. I was just like, I hadn't thought of it since I was like maybe 7 or 8 years old. Jocko, the Energizer Australian guy, but like I like brought it back and I was like, oh my gosh. Huh. I don't remember these specifically. I do remember these like 100 calorie pack things they were trying to sell, where they'd just be like, oh, make really small bags of stuff. Oreo granola bar. No, I don't remember that, but it was just these odd things from your childhood. You have no, Carmine. You don't know about Jocko?
No, the fitness guy, Jocko Wilnick.
What? How do you know about Jocko?
Oh,
Do
is
you
that the
watch
same guy
Mr.
you're talking
Sunday
about?
movies?
Okay, yo, you got to get off Sunday movies, man. I stopped watching. I unsubscribed from them like a couple years ago. They
What?
fell off for me for some reason.
I don't know. They have some good. I don't watch all their videos. I don't know why you're like you got to get it off. If there's something harmful to me. Um, as if
No,
like
but
as if I'm
Jocko
listening to like Jordan
will
Peterson and I'm like rotting my brain. Like it's.
but you're talking about the Navy SEALs guy, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think he was a football player.
Uh,
But this
you sure
guy,
we're talking about the same guy?
yeah. So there's this when I was young, there was this Australian guy in a leotard who would run around going, "What's the longest lasting battery of them all?" or whatever, and like talking about Energizer batteries. They were crazy.
Oh,
They were these crazy
we are not
crazy
talking
videos.
about the same guy. I don't think.
Yeah, no. And he'd be like, "Oi, Energizer batteries, oi!" And this was their advertising campaign. This was before the Energizer Bunny, maybe. It was pretty nuts. But I hadn't thought about him since I was like 7 years old, and they brought up fucking Jocko, the energy, and I was like, oh my god, fucking no, no. But a trial by combat between Jamie and Brienne. I mean, I think they would just stop in the middle and like start slashing Lady Stoneheart, start fighting. I mean, if there were a trial by combat, um, uh, Preston, if you decide to kill Jamie in Brienne's chapter, if you could do a Cersei chapter where she has to collect her body and does questionable things with the body, I would buy that. There's this really gross. Like I've never seen this movie and I don't even know the name of it. But when I was in college, this one girl I went to college with had watched this drama. I don't even know if it was a horror movie. It was a drama, and she said it was so disturbing that it made her lose faith in humanity. And she then told me the plot to pass on the pain. So maybe now I'm going to ring you all. This is like the ring. I'm going to tell you the plot of this story and it's going to disturb you. But the plot of it was essentially the main character is a necrophiliac and she can only climax and feel satisfied with dead bodies. And her boyfriend is incredibly in love with her and is like super depressed that like this is her thing, and that they and so at the end of the movie, to make her happy, he kills himself, and then she has sex with his body. And yeah, it's just like,
What movie is this?
I don't know, I forget what it was like, but it was just like that was the plot
Look
of it.
this
And I was
up.
like, but she thought it was so disturbing that she's like, whoever wrote that movie, she's lost faith in humanity. It's like the uh, um, human centipede kind of ideas, where you're just like, why would a human being come up with that idea and make a film about it? It's horrible, So, yeah, so it makes you just lose faith in humanity. But so I guess George R. R. Martin likes to put that stuff in.
Is it the movie Kiss? Let me see. Is this it?
It might be Kiss. That
Uh,
rings a bell. Well, I think it is Kiss.
Oh, yeah. The film stars Molly Parker as Sandra Larson, a young woman whose fixation on death leads her to study embalming at a mortuary school, where in turn she finds herself drawn towards feelings of necrophilia. Peter Outerbridge also stars as Matt, fellow student who develops romantic feelings for Sandra, so must learn to accept her sexual proclivities. What the fuck? What's the what's the reviews on this? What
I
is
think I don't think it's
Preston? What is going on?
I don't think it's done well, or I don't think if people look back on it
Actually, it
fondly.
won. It won an award. It was nominated for like what the fuck's a Genie Award? What is that?
I don't know. I don't know.
Genie Award? What the hell is this? Won an award. So
um, Preston, have you watched Emily in Paris? It's better than The Wire. By the way, thank you for all these years of helping me get to sleep. You are my lullaby. Huh. I've heard good things about it, but I have not. Um, have you been tempted to watch this,
you know,
Carmine?
real quick before we get to that, I have to ask because I mentioned this briefly in a previous stream, and
Mm.
I couldn't tell if you were annoyed by it or if you just wanted to move on. Does that annoy you when people say you help put them to sleep? Because that can be an insult, but at the same time, not.
No, no. So this is this thing, and I was gonna bring this up. because this actually relates to something Carmine and I were doing this week for fun. So Carmine has found this, like, has been playing around with like AI deep fake voice kind of stuff, and some people that like
You
know
want
how
me to
to do
send you
it.
some of them so you can play?
And
Do
so
you mind if I send you like
as a
the
joke,
George?
he did one on me, which and Carmine said, like, weirdly my voice, because they tested a whole bunch of them. They tested Carmine's voice. They did something with Alec Guinness. They did George R. Martin. They did a bunch of these voices. And weirdly, my voice was the hardest for the AI to actually replicate. Um, and I think this is because my voice goes up and down in pitch quite a bit. I sometimes I'm really low, and then all of a sudden I'm high, and I kind of jump up and down. Um, which is, I think, why my voice. Some people have called my voice quite a resting. Um, when some people have described me that. So it's always shocked me when people are like, "Oh no, I go to sleep with to your videos." But I don't know if, like, maybe when I do theory videos, I talk more in a level um, playing field, or just some people just like prefer different things, and like stuff that's like low tone and then high tone or whatever. But it's an odd thing.
Do you take that as an insult?
No, no, because I think I understand, like, the ASMR thing now, and how much of America is really struggling with it, because as much as I'm addicted to computers and social media, um, you kind of like have this idea that I must be kind of like middle of the road. That means there's a whole bunch of people that like are on social media a lot and have trouble sleeping because, like, you know um, just the way we are in our society. We watch some exciting movie right before bed and then we're up, or we're anxious about work, and all of these things, like, in the electronic age, has screwed up our sleep patterns. And so I myself have sleep problems. We all think now everybody has sleep problems, and I think I understand why ASMR is like so important to people as like a remedy in our modern world, where we're required to be in front of these electronic computer screens all day, and yet it screws up our circadian rhythms. We're required to be inside
Hmm.
offices rather than outside, under the sun, for proper regulated circadian rhythms. And so, no, I don't. I think it's a compliment. As long whatever works for
Okay,
people.
good, good.
Yeah, whatever
You
works
know
for
what it
because
is, by the way? It's
yeah,
it's you. You're also a little hard to edit because I've been editing your voice for like the last couple of years.
yeah.
So not only do you speak very calmly, I'm gonna ruin the podcast for a lot of people right now. What the thing with you is that you will talk, and it's almost like I love you when I before I say this, I love you.
Mm.
When you talk, it's almost like you run out of steam sometimes. For example, hey Preston, what's your favorite character? Well, my favorite character is Sweet Robin, and he's from the Vale. Like it's you go
Mm.
down a little as you finish your sentence, but you talk very calmly. Whereas you can tell exactly where I'm from because I talk fast. It's like nonstop, and I have like a beat,
Oh.
like rhythm to my voice. You are just very calm, relaxed. So the Dornish master plan is mostly about the idea that Doran Martell and Oberyn, in conjunction, thought of this idea to overthrow the Lannisters, and so and so forth. Whereas the Dornish master plan is this idea that Oberyn and blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm.
there's a difference between us.
I
Sorry
think
to
there's
take us off a tangent.
that's a very fascinating thing about tone, and where, like, tone, it's also like there's regional things, and and things like this, but tone usually tells people, like, when the end of the sentence is. Like, I kind of say, okay, I went to the store and I bought a candy bar. But if I say it like, I went to the store and I bought a candy bar, you kind of know that there's more, like, and like, um and so when you hear, like, say, different nationalities speak English, it's kind of interesting, because, like, French, for example, they famously will be talking, and then the end of their sentence goes up, and then they're talking, and the end of the sentence goes up again. And that's just not how, because we use the down to signal our sentences over. While if we're asking a question, did you go to the store? Like we use it to ask. So, but I do know that like people don't do it as much as me, and I do know that in certain regions, like um, people don't do it as much. Um, so I think that might be part of it. Like I signal like I'm done with the sentence. Like, but I see what you're saying. Running out of steam. I find myself often like beginning a sentence and then just quitting. Like with my wife will yell at me. She's like, "You started a thought." It's like, did you see? I was looking for this one book and then it's just like done. Like she's like,
By the way, I'm
uh
glad
huh.
you. I'm sorry to Mr. Black Dread. I'm taking this off in another direction, but um, so you watch Mr. Sunday movies. The way
Mm,
they do their podcast is vastly different than we do the one we do. So the way we do it is kind of like how Rogan does his, where he'll ask a question and the expert, which is you, will go into this like long thing. And I never try to interrupt you the way Mr. Sunday Movie does with his co-host, because they
mm.
like banter back and forth. It's like a quick banter, pop, 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 pop. I don't want to do that with you because I notice that you have a thought and you want to like train right through it. And every now and then I'll like, break in a little bit just to
Yeah.
add clarity to something. But for the most part, that's not how you and I do things. It's an actual long conversation versus Sunday Movies and Nerd Soup where it's pop, 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 pop back and forth.
Here's the weird thing about Mr. Sunday Movies is Mr. Sunday Movies is structured very differently from you and me because it's like um Mr. Sunday Movies is the host and he's the one like organizing the thought. He has his own opinions, but the nerd expert is Mason. But Mason is also the joke guy. So the expert and the entertainment joke guy are the same person, which is really odd. So the person constantly interrupting him is Mason. So like Mr. Sunday Movies will be talking, then Mason will jump in, zinger, joke. But he's also the guy that has all like the comic book knowledge. So it's really so yeah, like the magic of his stuff actually comes from Mason. He's the one doing all the work. He's the improv guy and has all the knowledge. But Mr. Sunday Movies runs the channel, and I suppose he organizes it all. So I don't know. It's okay. It depends. It depends what I'm watching. Depends on the video. They also do heavy editing. They edit out all of their pauses. A lot of times like they have editors add visuals and stuff like that. They have a couple of different editors doing that stuff, and their editors are very funny and the editor's a lot of jokes. So it's a whole process. So we don't have that kind of team. It's just you and me chatting. um
Yeah.
uh with the latest discovery of the early John chapters, does this give you hope that Bran will not be king? Also, how do you think the books will end? Um I mean, it gives me hope in the sense that yeah, George R. R. Martin changes his mind a lot. He changes his mind over major things. He restructures a lot. I think the early John chapters, it was those are small changes, like when Janice Slint dies and how. But I think the larger changes that give me more hope is finding out that Victarion was going to die, and he was going along with Victarion, and then just decided, you know what, I like this character. Let's keep going with Victarion. Let's completely restructure the plot. That all those visions that Danny saw about Euron, well, they're secretly about Victarion. Like I think that's a bigger thing that gives me hope going forward, that things will be different than deleting going to Craster's Keep or deleting or adding Janice Slint getting murdered or getting executed. I guess not murdered, but I think it does give me hope. I mean, the problem is that like my hope, where I don't have the hope, is that where George will finish the books. So that's the thing. Like I may have hope that they will be different. In fact, I fully expect that if George R. R. Martin were to finish The Winds of Winter and Dream of Spring, they would be utterly different from the show that we saw. Because why would anyone write a book that was the same as something that already came out. That would be silly. You know, um, but you know how's he gonna finish? How's he gonna finish? Um, Thoughts on the High Sparrow character and his end game? Um, I mean, I do kind of think that the High Sparrow needs to die, uh, just as a sense that like he's an unstable character. He is a symbol of religion. Religion needs to be removed if mankind is to choose their own destiny and this sort of thing. Like he needs to be killed. The question is who's doing it? Is it Cersei blowing him up in the Sept, like in the show, even though the Sept is the one place where wildfire is not beneath it? Or is it going to be Aegon? Is it going to be Dany? But I think that the High Sparrow represents religion. I mean, and you know, and everything negative about religion, because George is not a fan. He is not a fan of religion. He's not. And so you know, God needs to die in this structure. You know, just in the sense. I mean, in the same sense, I think the werewood needs to die. You know, that if Bran's going to choose his own path. So all of these characters need to choose their own path, and the High Sparrow being just he's a symbol. I don't think we're gonna get. I think the show got into this High Sparrow character a lot more than the books will ever. You know, so um, let's see. Have you watched House of Cards? It's better than Emily in Paris and The Wire combined, but just seasons 1 to 4. I fell off after season 4. I watched House of Cards season 1, and I thought it was very good. Um, it was nothing how government actually works, and you know, being in government and also like being in DC. That's not what DC looks like at all. Uh, Somebody said that it goes off the rail when he just commits murder like randomly, or not so randomly.
I've seen the whole series.
Yeah,
That's something Obama said about the show, that
mm,
it's kind of realistic. I believe Obama said one of the most unrealistic parts about House of Cards is how quickly everything moves into place
yeah.
in government and how quickly everything gets passed. But for the most part, it's somewhat legit. That's what he said. Season 1, great. Season 2, eh. Season 3 and 4, good. 5 and 6, not that great. Of course, it fell off when Kevin Spacey got kicked off the show.
Yeah, because Kevin Spacey. I mean, the whole show is Kevin Spacey, so I think you know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess that's what I meant. Like, government is very, very slow and very, very careful. And I don't think senators themselves or representatives themselves are doing all of this scheming in a vacuum by themselves. They have huge staffs, and these staffs do things. They run the show, and in many ways, the rep is just a figurehead. Um, but yeah, nothing works that fast. They're constantly being watched. They're constantly being followed. You can't just throw somebody in front of a train and get away with it. You can't just show up into a park and have a meeting with somebody and not have everybody notice. Um, you know, the weird thing about DC is like when you know you're working downtown and you know not everybody. Some people walk around, like some famous politicians walk around with entourages, and then some don't. Like sometimes you'll just see like a guy walking down, and you're just like, whoa, what that was. You know, that was Scooter Libby. Like I saw one Scooter Libby, like Scooter Libby just walked down the street, and you're just like, what? That was Scooter Libby. You know, you're just like, oh. And then other times, people that don't need an entourage like have one, and you're like, why does that guy have like 5 guys walking around him? Like no one's gonna recognize him. Um, and then you know, but enough people notice. Like when you see somebody, people notice. Like there's people like sometimes you're like, what? Who is everybody looking at? And then you kind of look and you're like, oh, I think I know that person. Who is that? Oh, it's Andrea Mitchell. Oh, okay. and then you go about your business. But like, there's no way like some senator is like meeting somebody in a park and not having people in the park being like, "Isn't that is uh, uh okay?" You know, like he's just. But whatever. And yeah,
Hey,
stuff doesn't
real
get
quick,
passed that
real
fast.
quick. Can you control my volume, by the way? I can't control it here, and I don't want to be too loud for people. You may have
I can
increased
control
my
your volume.
volume.
Why? You want me to turn your
Yeah,
volume down?
I'm just a tad bit. Also, I don't know if you know this, but
Ooh.
someone was doing an interview with George R. R. Martin. This is completely new, and George actually mentioned you by name. Did you hear about this?
What?
Yeah. You want me to, I clipped the whole thing. You want me to
Oh
send it to you?
no. No, 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 no.
You have to play this for people. It's
Oh no.
I just sent it to you
Okay.
on
This is
Facebook.
gonna be on Facebook. Are you playing it now?
No, I'm playing it. You play it on. You play it on yours. Oh, actually, want me to play it? I'll play it. I have to mute you.
This is this is this is Carmine being funny, but
You think I'm being funny? You think it's not serious? I'm telling you, it's George.
let's see if I can pull it.
Yeah, I heard about this guy on YouTube. Preston, I think his name is. He's doing a version of Wins, and I'm just going to retire now and let him handle it. However, I hope he drops that ridiculous Dornish master plan.
Did you hear that? Was that through?
That went perfect. That was perfect. I'm gonna have fun with this shit. By the way, shout out to my guy Ness. He's also in the chat. He was the one that told me that, like, out of all the voices, yours was like the most difficult one to pin down.
Yeah, yeah. So, um, do you think Howland has Ned's bones? Um, Good old Hallis Mullen. Like, where's Hallis Mullen? You know, there's there's two groups that might be in the neck right now. Um, and so let's see if we can get this map up here. Or is the north map better? Maybe the north map's better. Maybe I'll try. So obviously, like Howland Reed is is in the neck. Um, um, so here we go. Here's all the bogs in the neck here. So Catelyn essentially she got Ned's bones and then she sent Hallis Mullen north. And um, meanwhile, Lady Dustin had on the other side has people watching north of Moat Cailin, and no one has come out of the of the of the neck. So Hallis Mullen is lost somewhere north of River Runabouts. Now, you know, he could be anywhere, but the question is like, did he get lost in the swamps of the neck? What exactly happened? And it's considering that Roose Bolton's forces went up the King's Road one way, and didn't run into him. Like, what the hell happened to him? So now there are some stories that maybe the Beric Dondarrion faction of the Brotherhood Without Banners is hiding in the neck. And then because they have like Swampy Meg and stuff like that, and some stories about them just like going back into the neck. I think the Freys were complaining that they were going back into the neck. And then, or does Howland Reed have it? I mean, I guess it would be Howland Reed. Like I can't think of anywhere else Hallis Mullen would be. Though it'd be funny if Hallis Mullen just shows up in a random place. Because he's also with a bunch of Silent Sisters. Let's see here.
Doesn't Lady Dustin tell Theon that there's no way he'll emerge from the neck?
Well,
Like
he says
that's
that the
that's just
minute
not
he
gonna
emerges
happen.
from the neck, they're gonna grab the bones, and then she's gonna like feed them to
Mm.
dogs or something. Um, yeah. While on the way to the wedding of Lord Edmure and Rosalind Frey, the forces led by Rob come through the Whispering Wood, spotting some skeletons of soldiers who died earlier in the battle. Catelyn wonders what happened to her husband's remains after she sent Hallis and her honor guard north. She does not know if Hallis and his men were able to reach the Iron Men before the Iron Men took Moat Cailin. Barbary Dustin tells Theon Greyjoy that should Ned's bones emerge from the neck, the escorts will be prevented from going north of Barrington. Now, that reminds me, there's one other place that Hallis Mullen could be, though it's a real outside chance. It's a really outside chance. But there's a chance he was captured by the Ironborn and brought to the Iron Islands as a hostage for some reason. But Victarion never brings this up, so it's doubtful, because it would have been Victarion catching him. But that would have been an interesting thing as well. That a Victarion, like, you know, Victarion has Ned's bones for some reason, and now they're in Slaver's Bay. Like, that would be really crazy. Like, doubtful, because he never thought about that. So I guess you just have to assume that Howland Reed has it, or maybe the Brotherhood Without Banners, but that's about it. Unless somebody comes up with a more interesting tale of where Hallis Mullen could be. Let's see. Greyjoy War was started as the exile of the Antichrist Euron. Balon was also in, so had kept going. Why a House of Black and White assassin to murk Balon Greyjoy? Also, Algo in Espanol. So one of the reasons why, like, in A Storm of Swords, Arya goes to the Hollow Hell, the High Heart, and you know the not Sansa. I'm sorry. Okay, there was a Sansa prophecy at the same time, so I was confused. Arya goes to High Heart, and she talks to the ghost of High Heart, and she has a vision about a man with no face on a bridge. And so everybody's like, well, a man with no face on a bridge, that's a faceless man. So clearly a faceless man killed Balon. You know, that's essentially like what most of the fandom believes. Now, this never settled with me well, because I'm just like, that's a pretty obvious one, right? But George occasionally is very obvious, you know, so it could be. But at the same time, you know, it's pretty straightforward. A man without a face being a faceless man, like, couldn't you have come up with like something better? You know, like, when it comes to, you know, it's a little I don't know, easy for me, and not that poetic. Like, George could have said his face unseen, or no one could see his face, or his face shrouded, you know, and it would have been like a little better. And then we could puzzle out that it was a faceless man rather than a man without a face, you know? So I had always come up with an alternative theory to Balon being killed by a faceless man, was that he was killed by Jason Mallister. And the reason that I put forward the idea that he was killed by Jason Mallister is that, timeline-wise, it's really difficult for a faceless man to get onto the Iron Isles, because Balon Greyjoy puts the island in isolation, and we know it's in isolation because the ship in which Theon comes in to the Iron Isles, like, is kept there and doesn't deliver news about the Iron Isles to Robb until the isolation ends. So people wouldn't be trading with the Iron Isles. People wouldn't be going to the Iron Isles, because no one would want to get stuck there. So how would a faceless man get to the Iron Isles during this period of time? Now, it could be that just, you know, George is just not that careful and just didn't think about it. That's certainly a possibility. George has a lot of fuck-ups. Timeline-wise. You know, especially in A Dance with Dragons, where people are walking and things like this. Like if you try to figure out where Tychonosaurus should be, or like how on earth Manderley like ended up at Winterfell when he clearly said he was going when I'm sorry, why Manderley said he was going to Winterfell to a wedding when he should have been going to Barrington, and all these things. Like George fucks up with timelines, So, not to mention Robert's Rebellion, which is just a freaking mess. Like it's just dumb. So yeah, George could fuck up. So, but logically speaking, it should be really, really difficult for Faceless Men to get there. So I always thought that Jason Mallister was a better option. Plus, there was this seeded thing about like Jason Mallister's son like hanging out with Theon and then watching him, and like wouldn't the Mallisters be very mistrustful of the Ironborn and stuff like that? It's stuff to think about for the fanfic. Maybe it'll come up, but it's there's not much reason for Euron to really like kill Balon like he does, considering that like, or like to trade a dragon egg or all these other fan theories. Like, why did Balon really need to go and kill Balon so he could get a fleet, so he could bring the fleet to Dany? It's such an odd plan, but I don't know. I mean, that's sort of what people have in mind, right? That like somehow Euron was in Slaver's Bay. He sees Dany, decides, I need to marry this girl. What does she need? She needs a ship. Great. I am going to sail all the way to Braavos and hire a faceless man, send that faceless man ahead of me to kill my brother, and then when I arrive, I can declare myself king, grab a fleet, and bring the fleet to Dany. Like, that's the plan. But just timeline-wise, like, how is he even, like, achieving that in time? Like, how is he making it all the way up to Braavos and all the way back down? Like, Dany, assuming, like, Dany, like Dany's adventures happened at the very beginning of Storm of Swords, and her chapters are out of order. Like, how is he getting there by like Catelyn 6 or something? To do all that. It's really weird timeline wise. But anyway, I could rant forever about the weirdness of that particular plot line. Jaime would allow her to win Jaime would allow her to win. Lady Stoneheart lets him go. I talk about a trial by battle. I think was dealing with Brienne and Jaime. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if Jaime's really anxious to die or willing to kill himself for Brienne or anything at this point. So, this is awesome. LOL. This must be the deep fake. Yeah, I mean, we'll see about the how they deal with it. I don't see a trial by battle happening with Lady Stoneheart. I mean, I understand that it's that like trying to pull back the Beric Dondarrion and the Hound kind of idea, but everybody wants these trial by battle all over the place. I think with one happening with Cersei, would George put another one so close to it? I don't know. I mean, he's got 4 battles, I suppose. Would he have trial by battles all happening at the same time? Just one big book of battles, trial by battles, while the other battles are going on? I don't know. So you're saying a super assassin wouldn't be able to sneak in somewhere? I mean, he can't walk on water, right? Like, how, he's got to get on a ship. Like, Faceless Men can do a lot of stuff. He's a super assassin. I get it. But can a super assassin really walk on water to get to the Iron Isles? Like, how is he getting to the Iron Isles? How is he getting hired that fast? It just doesn't seem to fit. Once the Winds of Winter is here, will you guys start on A Dream of Spring? I think there'll be a long time of analyzing the Winds of Winter, but I mean the original plan in my head years ago was that George won't finish A Dream of Spring. Maybe I'll finish A Dream of Spring once the Winds of Winter is out, and then the Winds of Winter just wasn't coming out, and the years passed, and then we got like that really bad message from George, like at the beginning, like early in the year, early in 2022, where he's like, all of these projects are a priority, and really you're like, okay, well, that's not so good. And then and so it's just like, okay, the book's not coming, so what's weirder is that he's ended the year with giving this definitive I'm 75% done kind of thing, where I don't know what that means. Is that something to be optimistic about, or in the same place? I mean, because I believed he was 2/3 done, but him like giving a number like that, I don't know if it makes me more optimistic that he's going to finish or the same. He has a jetpack. Pay Davos to smuggle him onto the island. I mean, I suppose there could be a smuggler. I mean, that is a pretty simple. It's a pretty simple explanation that they got a small ship, and they smuggle themselves on. But it's still very difficult to deal with the timeline. I mean, the timeline with the Iron Isle is already kind of hard because let's see here. The chapter list. Because when does... All right. Catalan... Oh, no. Let's see. It's Catalan 6? No, it's even before Catalan 6, where the Miraham arrives. I'm trying to think. Is it Catalan 5? Or the Miraham? Yeah. All right. So... All right, here's the chapter list for A Storm of Swords. So, Catalan 5, which is the 45th chapter, about halfway through A Storm of Swords, is where the Miraham arrives and tells Robb that that Balon Greyjoy is dead, and that Euron has arrived and has claimed the island. So, and he's at, I think in that chapter, he is let's see, what city are they in? Are they in they're at Old Stones? Oh, Jason Mallister soon joins him at Hag's Mire, and he's brought with him the captain of the Miraham for the exposition. So we've got so it's like the Miraham gets out of exile, goes to Seaguard, and then they travel from Seaguard down to Hag's Mire, which I guess Hag's Mire isn't that far, but still, we're talking about another couple weeks, and so you're like way in the middle of A Storm of Swords, like all of this has happened. So, but Dany is conquering Slaver's Bay. Now I understand that like Dany's plot has to be compressed. Like they even say that she conquers Slaver's Bay in the matter of weeks. But like, so you have to assume that everything that Danny is doing is actually at the beginning of of a Storm of Swords. A Storm of Swords takes place over the course of about 4 months. So you're like 2 months in. Like I'm supposed to think that like Euron travels all the way to Bravos to hire a Faceless Man, and then the Faceless Man sometimes figures out how to get on a ship and smuggle himself onto the Iron Isles, and then Euron comes in after that. It's just a crazy kind of like timeline. He's preventing ships from leaving, and he's not preventing ships from arriving. That's true, but why? But no regular trading ship, knowing that you can't leave, would then go to the Iron Isles. So you would, I mean, he could charter a ship and be like, "We're going to the Iron Isles," and they'd be like, "Okay, but you know, well, you better pay me a bunch," and then go. But it'd just be an odd thing, like a Bravosi ship, you know? How is this Faceless Man doing this, you know? And isn't somebody going to mention this? Like, oh, there was this weird Bravosi ship that arrived right before Euron arrived, you know? Would they be good at their jobs? I'm not even sure Faceless Men are good at their jobs. The one Faceless Man that we know was in the Black Cells. And he gets out of the Black Cells. We don't even know what his mission is. And he nearly dies and needs to be rescued by a little girl, and then shows up in Old Town, like on some weird, like trying to convince some acolyte to give him a key when he could just change his face and walk in and get the key himself. I don't know if Faceless Men are good at their job. They're supposed to be good at their job, obviously, but it's I just don't know. I just don't understand like how he's getting on and why, and like why Euron would go through such a convoluted plan. Are you going to do part 2 to your video for the latest Cushing Library post with the deleted history of the Band of Nine? Yes, Carmen and I did that. He just has been slow in getting it to me, so I'm gonna piss him off. But we recorded those at the same time, but it was so long that we split it in half, and I had the first part. The second part I should post within the next couple of days. Oh, Carmine's back because he's like, "Fuck you." Hey there.
Hey.
So the Band of Nine conversation, the part 2 for our Cushing Library thing, that exists. Yes. So I was saying, so I'm gonna
wait. Did we even cover the Band of Nine on that? We did, right?
Yes. We did. That was the thing with Mary,
okay.
with Maylis the Monstrous. I definitely talked about that.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. So that's we actually have a part 3.
Finish.
We actually have a part 3 because there was some extra stuff with the Cushing Library that somebody followed up, not G stuff, but like somebody else followed up and went in and saw some other interesting things. So
is that really part 3 though? If it's a Game of Thrones and not Speech for Crows?
Yeah, you're right. It's somebody else came in and looked at some stuff from the Game of Thrones, just some very minor stuff, and we talked about it for a little bit. Here you go. Faceless drive-through in Lice. Euron paid for it with a Big Mac he stole from our dimension. So I have heard that, like, okay, does Euron need to travel all the way to Bravos to hire a Faceless Man? Like, maybe they have some sort of like representative in a different city where they can like serve. They can serve. So you stop into the Lice field office and you order the Faceless Man from abroad, you know, when you're really in a rush, you know. But I just kind of think it's not that interesting if it's just the Faceless Man. It's just so boring. I mean, George can be inconsistent with his writing. Like sometimes it's something's really hard to tell, and then sometimes it's obvious. But really, like, Man Without a Face, it's just here it is. The old gods stir and will not let me sleep. I dreamt I saw a shadow with a burning heart butchering a golden stag. Well, that's pretty obvious. I mean, all of them are pretty obvious, which makes me think that, like, um, yeah, because, like, he's not even trying at this point. Like, oh, really? You saw a shadow with a burning heart butchering a golden stag? I wonder who that could be. Like, I dreamt a man without a face waiting on a bridge that swayed and swung. On his shoulder perched a drowned crow with seaweed hanging from his wing. Okay, well, it's a crow's eye, but um, I dreamt a roaring river and a woman that was a fish. Dead she drifted with red tears in her cheeks, but when her eyelids opened, oh, I woke from terror. All this I dreamt and more. So, I mean, the other two are like dead obvious. So I guess, like, in that sense, it's written in such an obvious, format that, yeah, Faceless Man. I just think it's just be so much more interesting if it were something else. Yeah. So, or any of these. Could anyone else be a shadow with a burning heart butchering a golden stag? I mean, they could be John Connington. John Connington's invasion of the Stormlands. Him being the shadow of the grayscale. Burning heart, his love for Aegon and Rhaegar, and butchering a golden stag, like him conquering the Stormlands. I dreamt a roaring river with a woman that was a fish. Dead she drifted with red tears on her cheeks. I mean, it's obviously Catelyn, but and then her eyes opened. Like, but who else could be in a roaring river and a woman that was a fish? If only we had more women in our story. But maybe it could be Arianne going into Storm's End, the roaring river being the tunnel. But would she really be a fish? I don't know. Maybe Euron used a glass candle. I mean, did he kill Euron with Balon with a glass candle? The other thing that's weird about the Balon death is that there's different stories. The stories don't match of how he dies. Now I've got to bring up. I mean, this is we're getting like years and years ago into my Alliances of Iron series, but like, some say he fell off the bridge, and I think some say the bridge broke. So in The Kraken's Daughter, the message is Balon fell to his death when a rope bridge broke beneath him. A storm was rising, and the bridge swayed and twisted with each gust. Or so we are told. Your mother had a bird from Maester Wendemere. So Maester Wendemere seems to say that the bridge broke. But then I think, let's see, Victorian or Aeron chapter. What does they say? What do they say in Aeron? See, this in Aeron it says that he crossed a bridge at Pike when he fell to his death and dashed upon the rocks below. So for some reason, like, the bridge breaking is not part of the first story, but it's part of the second story. So oh yeah, he says the Greyjoy stronghold stood. The bridge knotted the pikes together. The arch bridge of carved stone. Was there a storm raging when he felled? Aeron demanded them. Um, it was the youth said, got to get to the next line. And then the storm god has cast him down. So it's like this idea that he like was swept from the bridge because of the storm versus like clearly the storm is just, you know, the bridge is just breaking. So Shireen is the burning heart. Yeah, sure. Downfall of Stannis. I mean, you could definitely come up with a lot of other cool things. Boring, yes, but we've had years to analyze, so that could be why. That's true. Also, like George tends to be more secretive and with stuff in A Feast for Crows and A Dance with Dragons. Those are denser books than A Storm of Swords is. The earlier books don't have as many secrets as the later two. But I guess why would the other thing is like why would you need a faceless man if it's just like you just got to cut the rope of a bridge? It's like really expensive for such an easy way to kill somebody. If a bridge breaks while you're crossing, you're probably going to fall to your death. It doesn't sound like it contradicts. Well, you know, not enough that you would like see it on a first read, but it stands weird. It's weird to me for me. Like say your parents die in a car crash, and they die in a car crash because the brakes failed on their car. Okay. Now, when you tell people, like, oh my gosh, my parents died, you usually, you know, would you say like, oh yeah, they died in a car crash, or would you immediately say like, the brakes failed on their car and they crashed? Like it's such a huge important part of the story. Like when somebody's just like, oh, he was on a bridge and he fell to his death, the first thing I'm going to go to is that, oh, it was swinging and swaying and there was a storm raging and he fell off and it slipped off. Versus like the bridge snapped. You know, like you wouldn't tell the story that way. I wouldn't like, you know, when there was a clear failure, like when the brakes of the car like fail, I'm not going to be like, well, you know, they died in a car crash. No, the brakes failed on their car. Like that's the most important thing. The most important thing to Balon dying is the bridge fucking broke. Not that he was like, oh, well, you know, he was walking on a bridge in a storm. Well, you're allowing me to like have a completely different impression when you say that, you know, like technically I didn't lie. Well, come on, you know, like, oh, like, well, how did your brother die? Well, you know, he went to a bar and he had a bunch to drink and then he got into his car and, you know, like if I said that, you're like, oh, he died as a you know, drunk driving accident. Like I didn't say that. Actually, a meteorite hit him, and so he died. In a, like what you would have fucking mentioned that like a meteorite hit him in the fucking car. Like, you know, you don't let people just like flow into an incorrect interpretation of stuff through a lack of information. Like no one tells a story that way. I mean, George R. Martin maybe, you know, but. Favorite Indiana Jones film. I mean, whose isn't Raiders? Like, come on. Like, it's like
mine. I like The Last Crusade. It's better.
What? No. No.
Last Crusade is great. What do you mean?
Last Crusade has some cheesy acting.
I know. I love it.
Also, like, has some cheesy acting. There's some bad green screen. Some of the jokes are funny, but like it's to the point of camp, you know. And if you're gonna go, I mean, Temple of Doom is like so campy, but which is like ridiculous. But there's things I appreciate about Temple of Doom, but it's also a movie that just like has so many problems, so many problems. Like, by the way, now we can go on an Indiana Jones rant. Have you ever like tried to think about how little sense the beginning of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom makes? Do you know what I'm talking
It's been a
about?
minute since I've seen it. Remind me.
So Indiana Jones, completely out of character, okay, has come upon the ashes of the first Manchu emperor, hundreds of years old, and wants to and is trading this artifact, this like historical artifact, for a diamond. You know, why Indiana Jones is doing this is never explained. Like is he now like treasure hunting and is like looking to get rich, like out of like what is he doing? You know, like in the next movie he's all about like putting stuff in museums, right? So he's so he goes into this like club, and they put on the Lazy Susan the diamond, and he puts on the Lazy Susan the ashes, and they round him about, and he gets the diamond, and he's like, good working with you. And then he drinks his martini, and it's got poison in it. And so now they're like, ha ha ha, you just drank some poison, so give us the diamond back. And he's like, crap, because we've got an antidote. And so he's like, crap. So he gives the diamond back for an antidote. And then they like don't give the antidote to him, so he like just starts going. He like picks up a big flaming shish kebab and like stabs one of the son of the gangster who's like trying to give him the diamond and the ashes. And then there's just chaos, and things are getting knocked all around, and the diamond is scooting around, and it gets mixed with some ice, and the antidote is scooting around, and he's trying to get everything. Indiana Jones gets the antidote and then has to escape, and he jumps into his car with Short Round, and they head to the airport, and he jumps onto the airplane, and he turns around and he goes, nice try, Lao She. And then he closes the door, and he's on Lao She's plane, and it takes off, and then makes a connection in Chongqing, China, and then takes off again. And then on that route, they just the guy jumps out of the plane, leaving Indiana Jones with in a plane that's about to crash. So just nothing. Like, why is Indiana Jones doing that? And then why is he like, nice try, Lao She? Like, Indiana Jones, you got out of there with nothing. No ashes, no diamonds. Okay, this is not a moment of celebration for you. Okay? Lao She, his son died. That sucks. But Lao She has both the diamond and the ashes. So he kind of got what he wanted, except for the fact that his son died. But like, what is Indiana Jones gloating about? He didn't get anything, and his best friend, he's got a Chinese like sidekick who gets murdered at that moment. Like, he's just like dead. His like best friend is like dead, and he's like gloating. He's sitting there going, nice try, Lao She. Like, why are you gloating? Your best friend died, you have no diamond, and you have no ashes. Like, what the fuck? Like, there's nothing that makes sense about the beginning of that movie. Now do you know what I'm talking about?
That's why it's the weakest. Yes, I remember now. And that's why it's the weakest, and that's why Last Crusade is awesome.
Oh man. But I don't know. I mean, Last Crusade, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
It's like Rings of Power. It's fine. It's fine. It's okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, what you were saying earlier about George, he sounds like George takes a lot from other people.
Oh, George? Yeah, he takes a lot from other people. He takes a lot from himself. I mean, that's how you get the it's a lot easier that way. I've noticed like
I actually think
yeah.
I believe in one of his most recent interviews, he actually admitted that he takes material from you. Actually, let me play that real quick.
Oh no.
Here he is saying how he takes.
I honestly have stopped writing. I kind of just steal ideas.
You want me to turn that up?
Live stream.
Did you hear that?
No, here, I'll turn you up. You're back at 100.
I honestly have stopped writing. I kind of just steal ideas from Preston's live stream.
That sounded pretty good. That sounded really good.
We're fucked, man. I showed this to Yoyston and I showed it to Trey, and they both said the same shit. We are fucked. It is over. We had a good run. We had a good
society. We as a society.
Yes, both. But YouTubers are also done. Because if you think about it, there is no way. Also, by the way, this answers the question of who replaces Justin Roiland as Rick and Morty. The AI.
Right, but they have voice actors that can do that shit like perfectly anyway. You know.
Oh, stop it.
Oh yeah. Oh, I forgot. Way at the beginning of my stream, I had a super chat about freaking taxing the rich or something, and some people being against that. Let me think here. Let me think. Let me see here. It's gonna be way back. Here it is. Let's get to that. So, spicy politics. Higher taxes on the wealthy, punish success, and stymie economic growth. Love your videos and I appreciate your work. So people, this is kind of like very trickle down. Is this idea that somehow wealthy people are the drivers of the economy, and like somehow everybody else like relies on them for their job's existence, which doesn't really have any evidence to support it. Like I don't really get it. I suppose there's like like some people think that if you go out and you start a business, like let's say you go out and you want to start a lawnmower business, okay, and you go out and you hire 10 guys. Now like in your mind, you're like, oh, I've created a business, I've hired 10 people, 10 people are being supported by me. Well, not really, right? Like other lawnmowers already exist. So like they would have had that business anyway. And you've come in and you've hired 10 guys, but you've taken them from other people's businesses. So you're not really increasing employment. You're not really increasing productivity. The same number of lawns is still being mowed. So you're not, so even though in somebody's mind, they've created this great lawn mowing business, they haven't really done anything. Like, in an economic sense, like the same number of lawns is being mowed as before. It's just now there's a different person in there. So people have this like idea about like, businesses as well. Like somehow I'm creating a business and I'm employing all these people. I must be creating something. It's like, well, are you creating something or are you like taking a greater market share? Now, some people say like, okay, well, I'm being efficient. I'm being more efficient in how I'm doing it. And therefore I'm somehow, creating more wealth, but we don't know who's capturing that efficiency. Like, yes, when efficiency happens, there's more wealth being captured, but we don't know who's capturing it. If it is it taken from dead weight loss, is the consumer capturing the wealth, or is the producer capturing the wealth? So, is the manager, is the worker, things like that. And we have to also say like, what is economic growth for in the end? Like you're saying, oh, I'm stymieing economic growth. Well, if economic growth isn't for the people, who is it for? Like I can be like, look, you guys shouldn't tax me because if you tax me, I can't go out and have as many fancy dinners. But you'd be like, but you're the one eating those fancy dinners. Why should I care that impeding your ability to have that fancy dinner? Like economic growth, the whole idea is that this economic growth is somehow benefiting people, benefiting the masses. But if it's only being captured by rich people, then why should I even value economic growth? Like the entire principle of the economic growth is so that the benefits can go to other people, you know? Um, so like how to, and wealth doesn't trickle down in any system. Like government is the only way it really distributes down to the poorest. So you essentially have to have the taxes in order to have masses benefit. Like what's the ultimate purpose of economic growth? The ultimate purpose of economic growth is for people to live better lives and take part in that enjoyment of wealth. Like, well, how are you doing it if you're not taxing wealthy people? Anyway, let's see. Do you agree that the State Department is bloated and needs to be culled? I do think that agencies like the State Department and others need culling. Let me bring up I don't know why that one would focus on the State Department so much. So let's see here. The thing is like, let's see here. All right, I'm going to bring up a thing about government spending. Okay. So this is spending by US federal agency. So at the top, we have the Department of the Treasury. Now, that's misleading. Okay. It's not that the Department of Treasury gets that much money. That's how much money passes through the Department of Treasury because they handle sending out Social Security checks. So when you say like 30% is under the Department of Treasury, SSA is actually an independent agency. Social Security Administration is an independent agency, but the checks are passed through the Department of Treasury. So nonetheless, Treasury is up there at the top. Okay, but that's Social Security, and you can't really cut that because those are been promised kind of numbers. So next we have HHS. 23%. That's Medicare and Medicaid. So we're talking like healthcare stuff. And those so these are, the biggest portions of our budget are stuff that's we call these entitlements. This is not discretionary spending. This is non-discretionary spending. Like we can't Congress cannot actually even change this without like fundamental structural changes to the government. So we get down to they actually list SSA separate, but anyway, the money passed through is through Treasury, but SSA I guess has the agency itself to deliver the I guess gets a bunch of money too, or anyway, Department of Defense, 1.9 trillion, and that's the first discretionary spending that we're going to get. Okay, so then we kind of go to some other things like VA. VA is often medical kind of stuff. Ag is mostly subsidies to farmers to not grow food. OPM is kind of like general. A lot of general smaller agencies and things are all kind of under OPM. So OPM ends up being kind of bloated like that. But I'm trying to think like, where is DOS? TOS. So Department of State is down at 75 billion. 0.68% of the US budget. So, I mean, you can go down that list like Treasury, HHS, DoD, SSA, VA, USDA, OPM, HUD, that's building public housing, Department of Transportation, building roads, Department of Energy, FDIC, pension guarantees, Department of Commerce, Department of Education, Corps of Engineers, US ACE. That's actually, more military. They just broke it up differently. Department of State. So like just a little bit more than the EPA, which is historically underfunded. And then, around the same level as like GSA, who does contracting for the government. Like it's not that this Department of State doesn't have a massive amount of waste. It does. I'm a freaking auditor. Okay. There's so many programs that are useless that the State Department does. Don't get me wrong. Okay. It's not that. Of course, stuff can be culled from the State Department. Of course. However, when you're looking at that list, like it's so funny, like dealing with DoD, because like when we start, like as an auditor, like sometimes we'll run into programs that are co-managed by Department of State and Department of Defense. This was often the case when we were in Iraq and Afghanistan, and like how they handled stuff was so differently. Like they had so much money, they just didn't even think about stuff. Like they're like, oh, well, that's, that's just, it's $100 million. I can't think about that. That's a rounding error to DOD. And you're like, what? Like, so it's not that I don't think it can't be culled, but it's like when people like focus on like, let's cut education or cut commerce or cut state. I'm like, you're not, this is, it's not the elephant in the room. The elephant in the room is DoD. Like that's just the way. It's the way it goes. ChatGPT CEO says it will end capitalism. Do you see an economic model to handle workers when there is no more work? I mean, we've been talking, like science fiction authors have been talking about this like lack of like this end of work like coming for a long time, but it hasn't happened, right? In fact, the reverse is happening, right? The reverse is like unemployment's at a near like an all-time low for the first time in like 60, like I think they said 1969. You talk to people and they're exhausted from working too much. Families work, both couples work. People just work all the time. Like I wish that would happen. I wish that we would be finding a situation where work disappeared and we had more leisure time, but we're going the other direction. So when people say like, oh, what are we going to do in this crisis? Like, oh my God, like let's cross that bridge when we're even close to coming to it. Like I know people that are like, that talk about like, they're worried about the like global population, like not being high enough. And I'm like, we've got like 8 billion people and it's supposed to go up to 14 billion people. Like, let's worry about there being too few people when we get down to like 3 billion, then we can start talking about that kind of stuff. But to be like worried about it, like, oh man, there's not enough people. Really, there's billions of people. Like, what are we gonna do when there's no more work? Oh my God, we're all working ourselves to death. Like, you know what? When we go down to like a 5-day week, and when people go down to a 4-day week, and when there's not enough work, and we have unemployment like in the 20% range, like maybe we can start talking about that. But I don't think that we're ever gonna, everything we do, every time we do these technological breakthroughs, it doesn't decrease work, it increases work. So I'm one to believe that like there's so much employment out there. Like this idea that like, oh, computers are going to be replacing our jobs. Like it just hasn't happened. People thought that. It just, we find new jobs. Came for Game of Thrones, stayed for Ranma. What have? Yes. Biggest balloon since Hindenburg. Thoughts? Um, so the balloon is a nothing burger, but the talk around it is more significant. Like the Secretary of State canceling a trip to China is a big deal. Like that's a big deal. But a lot has to do with like things that aren't that, like people making a big deal out of things that aren't that important because they really want to talk about something else. You know, when you get, you know, like guys, when you have this is for guys out there, when your girlfriend or wife gets angry at you for leaving the toilet seat up, and you get in a big fight, it's not about the fucking toilet seat. Okay, it's not about the toilet seat. It's about something else. Figure out what that other thing is, but it's not about the toilet seat. You know, you'll have these arguments all the time. You think it's about one thing, it's really about something else. The balloon is non-news. It's no story. The media is making a big deal out of it. However, the diplomacy breakdown behind the scenes is a bigger thing. Like, you know, months ago when Nancy Pelosi came to Taiwan, China made a big deal out of it because they wanted to make a big deal out of it. It wasn't really a big deal. Nancy Pelosi gets on a plane, big deal. But they want it to be a big deal. So the United States, maybe to get back at China for making a big deal out of Nancy Pelosi, wanted to make a big deal out of this weather balloon. Like, Chinese weather balloon, spy balloon, like, oh my God, like the United States has spy satellites over every inch of the earth. And we're going to worry about a freaking weather balloon? Like, come on. But they wanted to make a big deal out of it, you know? Probably to get back at the fact that China makes a big deal out of every little thing. So, like, because China makes a big deal out of every little thing, the United States is going to now make a big deal out of every little thing. So, yeah. But if China invaded Taiwan, do you think they would let you leave? Um, we would be evacuated immediately. What are you talking about? Or the Chinese, like, first of all, like, it's not like the Chinese can like invade Taiwan and like stop everything. Okay, that's not how like war or invasion works. You know, they would never be able to like take the island that fast and like capture everybody that fast. It's not like all of a sudden in the middle of the night, like literally 50 million people like like come out of the ocean to like take control of the country. You know, they would get ships, and then they would get in their ships, and they would have landings, and then the Taiwanese would fight them off, and then there would be cities taken, and you know, the island would be taken slowly over time, over weeks. So yeah, there would be a massive fleeing of Taiwanese for America, because massive number of Taiwanese have U.S. citizenship or have connections in Taiwan. I mean, in the United States, all the refugees, would be a huge refugee crisis for America if Taiwan were invaded. It would be insane. It would be absolutely insane. Like, you know, with Ukraine, you know, Ukrainians can go all over Europe. And it was still a big crisis. Taiwan, they're all coming to America. That's the big connection, you know. So, but yeah, I'd be evacuated anyway. But yeah, but China can't invade Taiwan for a lot of reasons. One, the United States exists, but two, like their army isn't big enough, their navy isn't big enough to take or occupy Taiwan. Like, it's just look at Russia and Ukraine. Like, if there's anything you're going to learn from that, and that was simple. Like, there's no water, there's no ocean. Like, all they had to do was march in with their tanks and take over, and they couldn't do it. You know, that's how hard it is. Imagine now it's an island, a mountainous island, and you have to land every single one of your like troops from a ship on a landing beach. It's just, oh my gosh. Um, how much does the experience the Chinese military actually have? This was actually a big issue. Beating up minorities doesn't count. So yeah, China has not been in an official, hasn't been in a real war since the late 70s when they had some border skirmishes with Vietnam. Um, so yeah, it's been a long time, and it's been 40 years, which is why they made a big deal out of the Nancy Pelosi visit. It's not that they thought Nancy Pelosi visiting Taiwan was a big deal. They wanted to do a bunch of military exercises, and so they found a reason to do military exercises that they would never get to do otherwise. It was a training thing. So, um, let's see. People drastically underestimate the effect of automation on the economy. It's going to be disastrous if we don't prepare. Um, I mean, I don't know. Didn't 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 this happen before? I mean, industrial revolution, car factories, mass production of chips and things like that. Like, we didn't see periods of like everybody being like, I don't have a job. Computers have done everything. This idea that like AI is gonna like take our jobs. Um, I mean, we've just gotten to the point where an AI can play chess, you know, and beat the chess people, and that's just chess. I just couldn't see like AIs knowing how to write a report, AIs like knowing how to respond properly to emails without people like figuring it out and gaming the system and like beating them. Um, uh, so I don't know. I mean, I think we are preparing. I think obviously in the future, if you want your children to have like jobs, teach them to be creative and you know not be assembly line workers. But that goes for anything. But I generally think that we are more and more people are going to university and getting kind of like creative thinking kind of jobs. We'll see what happens. I don't know. I don't think it's going to happen all at once. I think there's bigger crises, probably more environmental ones and stuff like that that are going to hit us more than like automation being the problem. Um, um, I'm just looking at this math here. Like any math equation, you can solve for any variable. V decreases an equal rate, and M increases that rate to the money supply. It doesn't cause a price hike. Um, yeah, so I'm not sure what oh, here we go. If someone argued with me the other day that the equation for inflation, MV equals PY, can only find that change in money supply causes price hikes and V velocity of money never changes. Like any math equation, you can solve for any variable. If V decreases at an equal rate, that M increases, then the increase to money supply didn't cause a price hike. Okay. Here's the problem, and the general problem with that equation is that um, it's totally based in kind of a rational expectations model, which economics has kind of gone away from. So like anything else, like rational expectations doesn't believe bubbles exist. Okay, the price of something is the price of something, and this gets into some really basic theory on like fundamentally. Okay, let's go on a really basic level. Fundamentally, how do you know how much something is worth? How do you know? Like, what's like? How do I know? Like this glass. How much is this glass worth? How much worth does it have? How much happiness am I getting out of it? what my willingness to pay for it, the market price for it. Like, what's the value of this glass? And fundamentally ask yourself, what is the value of something? It's a really hard thing to measure. Because again, like, water costs almost nothing. But what's your real, if you don't drink it, you die. So the value of water is pretty infinite. And yet we pay nothing for it, Air, I pay nothing for air, but the value of air is insanely high, right? Because when it comes down to it, the price of something is determined by the market, what people in a market pay for something, right? However, and like there are bubbles, people speculate, people think about what the price is going to be in the future. And that, when you're talking about supply and demand, you can change demand by people's ideas. And so like the rational expectations people don't think about these things. They don't think about bubbles, but we know that these bubbles exist. Like the fucking NFTs, we can look at like Elon Musk like doing a tweet and stocks like plummeting because we know that like people's emotions change their demand, which changes the price. Well, money is not different from any other commodity. It's not different from any other like thing. Like, right? Like the price of money is determined by supply and demand. And therefore the price of money is determined by people's demand for it, their emotions with regards to it. If everybody thinks that inflation is happening, inflation will happen. And we kind of know this kind of stuff actually exists, but like irrationally. But like, in these basic equations, like they're never going to have all of that. So like, this is why like in recent days, like in recent years, like people get into the psychology of stuff, but, and like why behavioral economics is like the big thing now, and why like neoclassical economics is kind of in the rear view. But well, we have to wait for a lot of government news to catch up. But yeah, you can't just use these like really basic equations to figure out inflation. It's the dumbest idea to do it. Like it's some really like every time they predict something about inflation, it hasn't done it, right? Like everybody's like, oh, inflation's going crazy, and then inflation just disappeared. Like now, and there's no inflation, like, I mean, I'd say no inflation, but like inflation just dropped out of nowhere and no one knows why really, like, oh, maybe, Biden and his interest rates did that kind of thing, but wait, Biden and his interest rates shouldn't have slowed the economy. No, the economy is doing great and unemployment is at an all-time low, which means according to the old inflation models that there should be hyperinflation, but there's not. None of these fucking models work right now. Anyway, that's just my rant on all that. Sorry. Why do you think rovers keep detecting methane on Mars? Is that life? What's funny is I used to live with a guy who was a geologist and studied Martian rocks, and he would have known the answer to this. But I do not. I guess there's natural methane on Mars has been an interest to geologists and biology. I do not know the reason. Trace amounts unknown. Yeah, I don't know. But I don't know. I used to live with a bunch of geologists. They used to talk about all these really weird things. Somebody actually asked me a while back about, because I did a geology and Game of Thrones video, and it was because one of my geology friends was like, "Hey, can you just do this speech?" I was like, "Okay," but they always had some really weird things that they would talk about. Like they would argue over like there's this geology thing about snowball Earth, whether there was a time in which the entire Earth was covered by glaciers, and whether it happened or not. And then there's like all these like really weird things that like don't matter. Like it doesn't matter at all if they're a snowball Earth or not. But they would argue. Yes, the correct answer in economics is always it depends or maybe. The joke is how many hands does an economist have? On the one hand, this happens. On the other hand, this happens. On the other hand, this happens. This is funny. Business majors finals are just crossword puzzles and coloring books. I back when Elon Musk was like tweeting a bunch and he's in the news all the time, I listened to like some of those Twitter space like public meetings that Elon Musk had, and it was amazing how like dumb and basic his level of economics and business was. Like it was astounding. Like it was like 101 level, but not even that good. It was really amazing to me how these guys don't really know what's going on. Like, or like don't think of other factors. And I'm specifically talking about he was in a meeting where he's like, oh, well, like, why is Tesla stock like tanking? And people were asking him this. And he's like, well, interest rates have gone up. And so, when people are like financing cars, like they look at, that affects the bottom line, of like, and it's like, okay, somewhat like, like, first of all, the people that are buying Teslas have a lot of money and they don't fucking care about the price, but to think that your stock price is completely based on interest rates. And then they started joking, like, maybe you could talk to like the people at your Fed and trying to get them the interest rates to go down. But to be like, to try to boil your stock price to whether or not people, because people often take out loans to finance their car payments, and so like a 1% increase in the interest rate is going to change your car payment. It's going to have a 1% increase in the interest on your loan. So say you're trying to buy $100,000. I don't know if Tesla's $100,000, $75,000 car. You're trying to buy a $75,000 car, and your interest rate is like 6%, and it goes up to 7%. You're going to be paying like not even that much money, more money a year. Like it's just not gonna be that big of a deal. But the fact that like he was blaming like the plummet of Tesla sales in 2022 on interest rates, is just like, oh my God, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, oh, the model sells at 30,000. Then even the case, like 1% interest rate change on that's the thing, is like a 1% interest rate change on a cheap car is not that much money. And an interest rate change on a high paying car are people that like don't care. Like it's just like it's just so silly to like try to blame like a massive plummet in your sales and your stock price on like a 1% shift in the interest rates in America. This is true. Corporations can price gouge and call it inflation, and everyone just can't believe it. They yeah, I mean, there has to be a little bit of conspiracy in order to do this. There has to be like a oligopoly kind of situation. We see this happening with gas prices, but it tends not to happen with most industries. Like most industries are pretty competitive, but it does happen. There is some collusion with certain stuff. But yeah, you can just call it inflation. Like I think universities, certainly there's that. Like all the Harvard is is increasing their tuition 10%. Well, I guess Princeton can do it too. That kind of stuff. But yeah. 1% as they front load the interest payments and the compound interest. No, I mean, so the interest is paid up front, but it's still amortized. So like, so you're like, you do 1%, like, let's see. I mean, let's see. If you got 30%, I don't know how fast people pay off their cars. Like, I've never done car financing, but like, do you mean like, what, 30,000? Let's do 10 years, right? So let's do 10 years. And so, um, you're you're doing 30,000 times 1.05, um, interest rate 10 times. Let me see here. Hold on a second. And let me figure this shit out. I gotta bring up my calculator. All right, let's do a 30,000, 1, 2, 3 times 1.05 over the course of 10 years. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 48,800. So you're paying, so for a $30,000 car, if you're paying 5% interest, you're essentially paying for a $48,000 car. But of course, there's inflation and things like this. So it's like rational expectations shouldn't mean there's actually any difference because the inflation should be in there. But when rational expectations doesn't apply, everybody just doesn't benefit them. Everybody ignores it. But because interest rates shouldn't actually matter at all with rational expectations. But okay, so $48,000. 48,000. Now let's do the same thing and now say it's a 30,000 for a 1.6, a 1% interest rate change. The difference is that then jumps to 50,000. So 50,000. So you're talking about a $1,500 difference on the price of a car from a 1% interest. And then but hold on though, because that's the total price of the car. We're talking about a 10-year horizon, so it's $150 a year. So $150 a year divided by 12, you're talking about a $13 a month difference in a Tesla. Like, do you think when somebody is buying a Tesla and they're doing their payments, like a $12, $13 a month, $120 a year is like making the difference? I just don't. I just like not enough to explain like the loss and the number of units that aren't getting sold anyway. But yeah, cartel, oligopoly. The cartel, oligopoly are synonymous. Yeah, but cartels, they're technically illegal in America, so they kind of happen informally. But yeah, oligopoly pricing is synonymous for cartel. Millions of dead chickens literally means billions of eggs not produced. I guess does this have to do with the egg inflation thing? Let's see here. Also, as payments are made, the amount that same interest rate goes down because the base amount is lower every year on top. Yeah, I think some people get floating interest rates and some people get locked in interest rates. I don't know. This is the thing as well. Ignore them because they're always spinning. That's the thing is he's looking like maybe he's not. Maybe he knows better, but like he's just saying this shit. Anyway, I've been on for a while. It's getting late for me, so I'm going to say goodbye to everyone. Unless there's any last thing. Carmine, you asleep yet?
No, no, you're on your economics thing. I didn't want to interrupt because yeah, that's not
Yeah, I realized
that is not
there's not
my
that much
jam.
spicy politics this week, and that's why everybody's been talking about balloons. So,
Thank Christ, no spicy. I mean, what's there to talk about? The Republicans are gonna ramp up bitching about what drag queens. What is it this week? Drag queens, CRT, whatever.
I
Because
guess.
Biden's doing a good job on jobs.
Hmm. Yeah.
What's what's
Um.
what's the what's the grift today? What's the grift lately?
Um. I don't know. I'm trying to think. I mean, you got to check to see what like Jordan Peterson is doing or Ben Shapiro, but even they are kind of bored these days. They don't really have much to talk about. Um. It does seem like there's a quiet lull in the outrage of the United States at the moment, right? Yeah, so it's not. Yeah. All right. Well, the I guess we'll see you next time, and that's about it. Thanks for everyone for tuning in. I'll talk to you guys next time.